So welcome to another board game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And I say a board game review that looks like a war game, it sounds like a war game, but it is not a war game. This is 1944 Race to the Rhine. It's from PHALANX. This is a 1 to 3 player game, not a war game. It is a racing game.
A Euro-themed racing, or a history-themed Euro racing game.
Yes.
So, and not pick up and delivery.
No.
Because you're not really meeting contracts, but you're racing to get to the top of the board.
Yes. So, it is about World War II. It is about kind of the race across France. Mm-hmm. So you have the Allied beachhead already established. And basically it plays 3 players. So one person plays as Monty, one person plays as Bradley, and one of them plays as Patton. And you have your different armies, and within each army there's 3 or 4 different corps that you play, and you're moving them up these kind of tracks that are all interlocked. And the real important part of this game is that this is a supply game.
Yes, logistics.
Yeah, so this is a logistics game without being, crunchy and heavy and numbers based. There's oil barrels, there's ammunition crates, and then there's food tins. You
spam.
Bully beef. You move your cores up, and then you have to then lay out trucks and bring up supplies so they can keep moving. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of a cycle you're trying to get into where you can keep moving and keep progressing. First player across the River Rhine and can establish kind of a, what do you call that? A bridgehead.
A bridgehead. You have to defeat the army that's waiting on the other side of the Rhine for you.
And still be in supply.
Yep.
Wins the game.
Yep.
If no one does that at the end of a certain number of rounds, basically, or a certain number of turns, then it goes to like victory medals, and there's medals for having captured or liberated certain towns, or doing some nice things on your cards.
Feeding starving civilians.
But really, you want to get across the Rhine, all out victory, call it good.
It's a race game.
Yes. And, so the rules on this one weren't my favorite to learn. I'm just going to say that.
Very tough rule book. I don't know that it was organized well. I don't know that it was clear.
And it's just different from what I'm used to.
Right.
We play a lot of war games. I'm used to how a war game looks and feels and how it's laid out. And this is just different. Mm-hmm. And so I was expecting things to be in a certain way, and it was difficult to find stuff in the rules once you learnt it, I felt at least. And there aren't any major play aids.
No.
So it was kind of like, I've spent a lot of time in the rule book.
Yeah, you had the play aids, but they were really only what the actions
were.
They didn't explain them.
Yeah, which, that's fine once you know the game, but once you know the game, you don't need that.
No.
But
learning it is going to be a challenge with the rule book. You're going to have to read it a couple of times, push things around before you get it. And we did. We started a game.
Yes.
We played with your wife, Kelly. We played a 3-player game, which was pretty fun.
And she declined to be on the video, so sorry.
But I think we played for about 30 minutes, and we realized, we made some big mistakes with the...
Well, it's because we were playing it, and then I was like, we've made a mistake, because it didn't feel right.
Right.
So we went back and changed it, and we changed it to something that was even more wrong.
Still didn't feel right.
And so then we went back again, and I looked online to look for the forums, and I was like, okay, I got some clarifications, and changed it back again, and then to what it should have been changed to. And so it took a while to get it, and once you start playing, it becomes a bit more apparent what you should be doing, but you just got to be careful with the rules. Yeah. Read them thoroughly, very, very thoroughly.
Well, and by no means is the game overly complex.
No,
it's just a matter of
it's really not.
Understanding, I only use 6 trucks to start, and then when you hit this point, you add another... 8. I think the 8 is added, at the end of the... I can't remember.
As soon as someone gets to level 3 and
you add the other 8 trucks, and everybody starts with a certain amount of trucks. That was another thing we kind of messed up early.
It's these little bits are tucked away in the rules, and you've got to make sure that you read them. And so maybe that was just me. Maybe I was having a bad night with the rules, because I've read much more complicated rule books than that.
Thicker rule books.
But... I don't know. I was just struggling.
We just, once again, you're going to miss certain aspects unless you're uber careful.
And on the BGG forums, I felt vindicated because someone started a thread that was like, be honest, what's the rule that you missed?
Yeah.
I was like, okay. Like,
we missed a couple, but yeah. What's the rule you missed?
Once you actually play it, the game is fairly simple.
Yeah.
It's just a different style of game from anything that we've already played, at least regularly. It really is. It's racing up, but making sure you've got this kind of supply cycle with having supplies and having the correct number of trucks, getting them up, getting them moved, and using your action economy to keep your forces moving to be the one to get across the Rhine and get that prestige.
And that's another thing, because that is such a key part of the game, kind of having a wave of continual supply that's kind of moving up, because, you know, from this starting point, it's somewhere between 8 to 12 spaces to make it to the end, and you've only got a certain amount of trucks. So you've really got to be judicious with those, because you can only use, in the early game, you can only place 2 at a time. So you're going to move 2 spaces really slow. Later on in the game, you can do up to 4. So it's a matter of really planning that out, doing staging points, ammo dumps, food dumps, and then you gotta plan that out. So I liked that aspect.
Yes.
The other thing we noticed in a 3-player game, the kind of the wings, the British in the north along the coast, and then Patton on the south side going through the southern part of France, there were more opportunities for them to gain supply kind of in the middle of their push.
Yeah, there's these little limited supply dumps where you can pick up extra supplies on your way. Which it is a huge boon if you can get over there and get it. But, you know, that requires Patton to take a longer, more convoluted route. Yep. It requires Monty on the coast to do a few more battles than they might be willing to do, which uses up supplies. So
it's a choice. But the reason I brought that up is Bradley, who's in the middle, doesn't necessarily have that option.
Yes.
And we found that interesting. We only played this twice. But we found that interesting, and I wonder how that's going to play over, say, 5 to 10 games. You know, is the advantage, because their advantage was they could move 1 extra space. What was there? No, that was Patton's.
So Patton can do an extra move.
Like a core can move again.
Bradley starts higher up. He can use more supplies early on in the game.
So he'll get more supply, more trucks.
And then gets up to the higher level faster as well. And then he can do more air support.
Right.
So there's a little bit of asymmetry.
There is.
Monty has the capacity to get more supplies. He's on the coast.
Yeah.
So he can just
easier.
Off the top, right? So he can, you know, do a big supply grab. Boom! I just pick up, you know, 5 barrels of oil instead of 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so each guy has their own different advantages they can do, but in the end, you have to be very, very clever in how you do it.
Agreed.
You've got to pick good routes, and then hopefully, maybe not disguise what you're trying to do, but give yourself options for when things start to get gummed up with all the Axis armies that the enemy, or your opponents are kind of putting in your way near the Rhine. And then you also have to work with your deck of cards.
Yes.
As the game, as soon as you move into unoccupied areas, you're going to pull a card, and you're going to every time you move, you can pull 2 or 3 of those probably. And some of those are like get a free supply, or you can change one of your supplies to something else. But a lot of them are like you find a German army and you have to fight them, and you lose a supply,
and then you have to stop unless you spend more fuel. Yes. So those cards, I really liked that deck, and there were 20 cards in that deck. So you're not going to cycle through it very quickly, but it was interesting in the games that we played. I noticed in my deck, I hit some of the really bad ones early on, and I was totally okay with that, because then it gave me a good run of good cards. So that was kind of interesting. That's going to be some variability throughout the game, and I really liked these because it added another element that you had to plan for.
Yeah, that's the major element of randomness. There's some randomness in the Axis army deck as well.
Right.
When you meet an Axis army, you just pull a card and you have to say, this is what you're fighting. And it's like, I need to spend ammo, fuel, or ammo, or ammo.
No dice rolling.
But there's not a ton of variability in there, so you can kind of kind of plan and think, all right, it's most likely going to be this. Or you can use a recon to look and then go in for it after you've done that.
Which is really cool. I like that recon. I used it a couple of times to my benefit, and I can definitely see using the cards you drew as well as your aircraft recon. I think those are very important. And as you play more and more often and get more experience, I think those are going to become more important for your strategy.
But generally speaking, this game, I think, has a very good mixture of planning, logistics, and thinking and strategy.
Yes.
With a little bit of randomness in the cards.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the cards are like, stop.
Yeah.
Or use a fuel to keep going. And like, if you don't have a fuel or it's really expensive, you're then like, that resupply becomes much, much more important when I thought I had a bit of extra time, maybe.
Well, drawing that card that required you to spend an extra fuel at the end of your turn is awesome.
Yes.
You kind of get it out of your deck, but you don't necessarily, I'll stop because I moved my 3 spots.
No big deal. Don't want to move anymore.
The other thing I really liked about the supply element, they focused on fuel, food, and ammo. And it really is, fuel and food are kind of important at the beginning because you got to move. And then once a turn ends, you got to eat. So you got to have that food, but you're trying to position yourself for that final strike. And then you really need oil and ammo. Food isn't really important. So there's an element of risk taking.
So that's just it. It's still very important. You have to have everyone with food because if you don't, the other players are going to be racing to put trucks out and clear the trucks out. So then if you don't have food to eat, all of your forces get grounded. And you cannot do anything
for a whole turn
because they're too hungry, and so you have to get food to them for them to flip back over.
But I did like that I felt like I was balancing on a pendulum between I really got to worry about food, but there comes that moment. It's like you see the break in the clouds and
you're like,
the sun comes down. Man, I'm going to hit there, and you got to be ready to take those actions. So I liked that extra element to the planning, not only planning to get supplies up there, but what type you need at that very time.
Yes.
The other thing that I thought was pretty gamey and fun was the placement of these Axis armies.
Yeah, so basically anytime you are done with your turn, you place out this little kind of Axis army marker, and it's their little reaction. And so there are some rules about how and when you place them, but basically you're going to build like a front line across the top of the board.
So everybody's hampered.
Yeah.
In essence.
You can't leave a space for someone to swing in.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. Otherwise you're handing someone a win, basically. And then it's, you're basically chaining those, putting more out in adjacency to try and cut people's supply, remove their markers, and really kind of encircle people and screw them over so they don't have to bring in support corps or backtrack or you just can't do anything.
Yeah, because if that supply line gets cut,
it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you make it across the board. You can't win because you don't have supply.
Yeah. So I really liked that. I liked that gaminess of trying to figure out, I got to put one there and then there, and I got to get this person to help me as well because, hey, they're leading. So it's like you guys were desperately trying to cut my supply there, and I happen to have a support corps kind of coming up protecting it. And I like that.
And it forces you to do that instead of making a final advance over the Rhine. There's some really neat interplay in this game for that.
I can see why people speak very highly of this game.
Yes.
But it is not a war game.
Nope.
It is a Euro-style race game with some logistics, but it has that military World War II theme, and I really like it. From the look of the box to the look of the board, the pieces, very well done.
Yes. Now, what I'll do is I'll show you the board and a little bit of how it works, and we'll just wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a quick look at the board. It is very tan, but you can see the board is generally divided up into this big red section here, and there's a big white section in the middle, and there's a big blue section over here as well. And these are for this is player colors. So you've got Monty over here. This is technically the north side, and then you've got Bradley in the middle, and you've got Patton over here as well. And there's some start areas down here where you'll start, and it's about moving your corps up through your kind of lane, trying to get over the Rhine on this end of the board. First person to get over the Rhine in supply into one of these kind of black victory areas on the end here wins the game. If no one does that, by the time the game ends, it comes down to medal count, and there's medals for taking strategic cities like Brussels, Trier, Luxembourg, things like that, and as well as a couple of things like on some cards offer you the opportunity to feed starving civilians, get yourself a medal for that too. So a lot of the time, well, I don't know. I'd be interested to see statistics over all the players of every play, how often people make it over the Rhine or how often it comes down to medals. That would be interesting to see. But generally speaking, you're moving your cores, and each of your core you have this core card, and it has 6 slots for supply. Here we've got 2 of these wooden oil barrels and 2 of these little tinned meat rations. You basically spend an oil drum to move the corresponding counter on the board. So to move this guy, you spend the fuel, and you can move 3 spaces. Each time you move, you pull a card. So this card is a recon card, and it has this hand symbol. We can keep it on a hand. We're going to do that because that recon allows us to look at something else later. And then we'll liberate Meru, and then we're going to go up here. We're going to look at another card. 708th Infantry Division. As soon as we get there, we have to spend a brown ammunition crate. Well, on this core card, we don't have one. So we don't defeat them. So we just go back where we came from, and we don't take... Oh, no. We don't take this place, we go back to where we came from. If we had defeated them, if we had a brown one to spend, we would spend it. But this is, if you defeat them, you have to spend another oil drum to keep going. Now, we already used one to move in the first place, so this becomes very, very expensive just to move one space. I'll call it good and move them on a subsequent turn, I think. So there's a lot of, that's kind of movement. Now, once you start using up all these supplies, well, they can't move if they've used all their oil drums. So what do I have to do? How do I get them more oil drums? Well, over here there's this supply of oil drums, which is just off camera. Let me show you. Right here there's this kind of supply. These are what are available that are on the board. This is just a pile of them. So there's this amount of food, this amount of ammunition, and this amount of gas. So we've used up a lot of it. So to get those, you would have to take, you kind of take a gather supplies action. You can either take one of each, or you can take 3 of one kind. So if there's not 3 of one kind to take, so that would be inefficient, so we'll just take 1 of each, and you put them in your kind of starting area right here. Well, how do I get these up to here? Well, you would have a supply of these green trucks. Well, I don't have any green trucks, so I might take green trucks action. I can't do that because I've moved and I've taken supplies. You only get 2 actions on a turn. So I'm going to have to wait to get trucks to move my supplies next time. So after I've done my 2 actions, what we do is we place an Axis Army marker. These are little kind of reaction markers. What you'll see is there's a whole bunch of them over here, and you will place more and more and more, and these will kind of basically filter down. They block everything up. You have to fight these to get through to even cross the Rhine. So you need more and more supplies to get through more and more waves of German troops, basically. Now I can place these anywhere adjacent to where one already is. There's some rules like you can't, so right here, I can't place one in Bastogne because this core is right next to Bastogne. It's kind of my area of influence or a zone of control if you're a wargamer, so to speak. So these are kind of creeping around the board, gumming things up or blocking paths to things which might be strategically very important. And if it's my turn, I'm the white guy. Well, I'm not going to put one here. I'm going to stick it and block up Monty so that he's got a harder time to win. I'm going to keep mine as free of these as possible, or I might gum up Patton because I don't want Patton to win. I need to burst through instead. That's my 2 actions. Next player goes. When it comes back around to my turn, well, I need those green trucks. So you take the take trucks action. Now, there is a little key down here as well of how much of each thing you can do. Bradley's on level 3, so they can take 8 trucks. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you look, there's hardly any trucks left in here. So I take 8 trucks, but I can only place 4 trucks. Well, that's not terrible. All my supplies are down here, so I'm going to go 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 trucks. And basically, whenever I place the trucks, you can move up to 5 supplies, 1, and then I place that truck, I move 1, and then I move 1, and then they all get onto here, and I'm just going to load up this guy. He's got all the food in the world right there. So I took trucks, and I placed them and moved supplies. So that's my 2 actions. You put another actions marker, next turn for the next player, next turn for the next player. By the time it comes back to me, I might move again, or I might move somewhere else. Now, the real key of this game is these don't get removed until there are no trucks in this supply area right here. So, if I end up moving here, or if I try to take Amiens and use up my supplies, if I need to place trucks again, remember I've got this pool of trucks that I just gathered. What you can't do, if I move up here, and let's say I had a whole bunch of gas down here, what I can't do is do this and use this supply chain. That's not how it works. I bet you have to load them onto trucks effectively, so you have to think about it, and I have to drive them. This is a log jam of driving supplies up and back again already, so I now have to make a new path. So I've got to figure out how to get supplies to this guy going around this way. So you have to be really careful about not gumming yourself up, which will happen at times. So I might go 1, 2, 3, 4 on my next turn. Well, I can move the supplies up here, which doesn't really help this guy yet. And then on a subsequent turn, I might have to move him here to move him again. Keeping your guys in supply is the real challenge in this. And, being able to keep routes open for you to do that is very difficult up here because you'll have lots of guys, but then the Axis are encroaching in on you and might start cutting your supply lines so you can't drive through there with your trucks. It's a very, very interesting little game. There's a lot of cool nuance in these random cards. So some things might, you get to take 1 extra action one time, or you get a free oil drum, you find captured supplies. Or, you capture some weapons, you get an ammunition. Or again, you might feed some starving civilians to get a medal for a victory point. There's some neat little bits and pieces in this one. It's a very cool and creative game. What we'll do is we'll just wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at how the game works. It's neat. The components are really, really nice. Yes. This is a very well produced game. I was looking up. I don't know how available this is at the moment.
It's probably out of print.
I think it might be.
My guess, and I haven't seen, because one of the reasons we're playing this now, I've owned this for a while. We've just never gotten around to playing it. One of the reasons we're playing this is there is a new Kickstarter coming out from PHALANX for a new game called 1941 Race to Moscow. So it deals with Operation Barbarossa and the attack, the movement towards Moscow and all the logistics there. My guess, the reason I bring that up, my guess is they're going to offer this as an add-on.
I hope so.
Like a reprint add-on. I don't know if they're going to change the components, because I'm going to be honest, the components in the 1941 are pretty dope.
Yes.
These are cool, but this is a fuel barrel, but they're putting some really cool 3D printed plastic barrels, which look really great.
But yeah, I don't, because I looked online because I was like, I felt like this was a fairly reasonably priced game when it came out.
Yeah, I think it was about 45 or 50
and
bucks.
everyone was complaining online. I was like, what's the deal? And it's like $120 on eBay.
So that means it's
$150 on secondhand market. And I was
out
like,
of print.
oh my gosh. Okay.
So maybe they're going to offer it. I've had mine for a couple of years. In fact, Tim bought this.
Yes.
Used to be with the blog. Tim bought this and just gave it to us. I think I traded him a game for it, but I'm glad we finally got to play it because I think it's a very interesting exercise and really played quickly. We played this in about 40 minutes, give or take. I think 40 to 45 is about what it's going to take you once you get the rules down.
Yeah.
And I also think, we played with your wife who doesn't love board games. She did okay with the rules. She understood what was going on. I think she had a good time until it was over, and then she was like, "Can this just be over?" But that was
that's because it wasn't phase 10,
right? So yeah, I look forward to. We're going to now play a couple of times and shoot a video for 1941.
Yes,
and we're gonna kind of do that compare and contrast in that video to help everyone understand if you like this, what's new and different about 1941. So that'll be fun to take a look at.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing this. This is 1944 Race to the Rhine from PHALANX. If you can get a hold of it, or if you know someone's got it, give it a go.
Yeah.
It's you all play on the side of the Allies, which is nice.
Yep.
No one has to play the bad guys.
Yeah, you don't have to play the bad guys.
So it's a bit more palatable for people who maybe aren't, interested in like historical simulation or anything like that. Everyone plays as a good guy, and it's a racing game. It's not like an outright fighting combat game.
Right.
There's no crunchy rules to do with, terrain and line of sight and all this mess. It's just moving around, spend some supplies, call it.
Yeah.
So, very unique game as well, at least from the stuff that we've done.
I'm glad we played it. Yeah. I think it was a good experience, and I can definitely, once again, see why people. I've heard a lot of good comments about it.
Yeah, people who like logistics games like this game.
Yeah.
I think it's very fun, enjoyable, because it's also short. You can get it at the table fairly easily as well.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Race to the Rhine 1944 from PHALANX. I've been Alexander.
And I'm Grant.